Okay, welcome back, listeners. We are once again back down the red rabbit hole. Like Nicky would say, what are you doing here? Why are you still here with us? And even more, Nicky, why are you still here?
I really don't anymore.
Grace, why are you still here?
I don't know how to leave. I can't find my way out.
We haven't given you the.
Don't worry, Lorraine. You have a guest pass. You're not banished like me and Lisa. You have a guest pass.
Yes,
we will let you out.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So welcome back, listeners. This is part 2, episode 11, part 2 of our deep dive into Lorraine's book Pins and Needles, which was based on the case of Harold Shipman. If you haven't already listened to part 1, please go and have a listen to part 1. We've already had some absolutely fascinating discussion, and Nicky left us on a bit of a cliffhanger because we were talking about how much we implicitly trust our doctors, and Nicky's about to make us really question that next time we have to go to the GP, I think. What happened, Nick?
I may have made it sound a little more dramatic than what it actually was. But I'm going to lay it out there.
No, ham it right up. I want it at full.
I used to suffer from bouts of tonsillitis. And at the time, they weren't willing to take them out. So I went to a doctor. He was a new doctor. I will say that much. Not in terms of like, no, he was a new doctor to me. Like, he didn't know me, and he kind of did a cursory, stare down my throat and kind of asked me some random questions, and then he kind of did something on the computer, and then he gave me a prescription without really much fanfare. And when I went to get it filled, I discovered that it was penicillin. It was a variation of penicillin, which I am deathly allergic to.
Right. So am I, funnily enough.
And there's things I can take, which I had been prescribed many times in the past. But obviously, this is the first time that any doctor, and I've seen many doctors, as we all tend to do. We don't often have the same one anymore like we used to.
Well, that is because of Shipman. That is one of the things that came out of the inquiry, that it should now be that you rather have one named doctor, that you would have everybody in the.
You kind of hope they've got notes. That's what I would hope, that my surgery would have notes on to say, okay, so, and this was quite some time ago. It's not the surgery that I'm with now. They're way better. And obviously know that I have an allergy when they try to prescribe me something. But this was quite some time ago. And I just think he would have had the notes there. It's got to be pretty obvious if it's a big problem not to prescribe me penicillin. But if I hadn't, got it filled and been talking to the pharmacist at the time, I'd have just took it.
Yeah, I think I would have just trusted. But that they did, after Shipman, the University of Dundee did a study where they looked at sort of, actually, was it 2008? 2008 they did this study, and they looked at, could it happen again? And they actually found that it would still need to be up to about 30 potential murders before a pattern would be spotted. So we're still not, like, they made lots of changes after the case, but actually whether we are safe or not is
as I said in the previous episode, I live in Spain, and I have done for decades, and the system here, everything is computerized. Is that not the case in the UK? I mean, I don't know, because it's a long time since I've lived there.
It should be. He definitely had a computer in front of him. That's what made me think, because I probably didn't even say to him, oh, by the way, I'm allergic to penicillin, because you kind of assume they know that, being your doctor.
Or they always ask.
Well, they should ask, or it should be flagged up on your file. For example, here, if I went to a doctor and he then referred me to a hospital, let's say, the doctor in the hospital would bring up my entire record, not just to do with why I've been sent there. It would be he would have everything. Everything is computerized for every medical person to be able to access it. And I think that's quite a good idea, because I'm allergic to penicillin, And that actually gets flagged up immediately, and it should have been in your case.
But then again, I suppose it's not that long ago that they changed the ruling around packaging on foods. And that was to do with people,
Yes.
people with allergies who had unfortunately died because food hadn't been correctly labelled with everything that would possibly be in it. So,
well, the book I'm writing at the moment, it's only going to be out sort of much later, but the book I'm writing at the moment, my main protagonist has a peanut allergy, and the person who is determined to do away with her finds a way to infect some of her food with peanut dust.
Oh, diabolical.
And tamper with her egg.
Oh no.
Wow. I think if your husband suddenly dies, Lorraine, we're going to be all over that.
Side of the mug, he needs to turn it round, and it says
yeah,
please call SOS.
Please call 999. Yeah.
He said he sleeps with one eye open, and I believe him.
Oh, that is because you'd be trying to get the help, and then the help wouldn't work.
Okay, you can relax. She survives.
Okay, oh good.
She survives that attempt.
Oh, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Well, I heard something really diabolical once, and it actually came from an old friend of mine. She's not my friend anymore.
Oh.
not for this reason, strangely, but so her ex-husband cheated on her, and he was epileptic, and she did a course in aromatherapy and learned very quickly that lavender oil brings on epileptic fits.
No.
So yes. And you can see the next couple of steps that happened that she told me about.
Oh my goodness. Is it making sure that you had like putting screens up all around the house with flashing images on while also pumping in lavender oil and essence into the air?
She was putting it in his pillow on the bed. Yeah. Bed. Yeah. Yeah. She was but he cheated on her. He kind of
you don't have to go underworld to get hold of lavender either, do you? Everywhere.
No, you don't. And also nobody it's a fact that very few people, unless they're in like aromatherapy, if they're in that kind of industry, might be aware of. Because I mean, I go and you go and get a massage. They don't ask you to say, are you epileptic? No. That's not on anything. So it's I think it's one of those things you either know or you don't. But yeah, he did suffer from a few fits that perhaps he didn't know where they came from.
Oh my God.
I am now dying to know what it was she did that ended your friendship. It wasn't that. I mean,
well,
it's got to be something really bad.
It wasn't like I said one day, oh no, you're not my friend anymore, because I'd never do that to anybody, because I think you have good and bad days, don't you? Sometimes you're
6 and in the playground. You're not my friend.
Yeah, you're not like you're not pushing people over, and sometimes you have the oil of lavender in your hands, and sometimes you don't. And that's fine. But it was a gradual kind of distancing that kind of happens. But if she crossed my path again, I'd obviously speak to her and I'd ask her
how's he doing? Is he all right? Yeah.
How's he doing? Is he dead yet?
Has she met anyone new? And did she do an allergy test on the first date?
I love it.
Yes,
I may have to use that.
Let me prick your finger and just see what's going on here.
I definitely may have to use that in a future book. I'm sorry. I'm going to steal it.
That's all right. It's there. So talking about
up on them. Have you got any existing heart condition? Anything that's kind of that won't tolerate this, that, or the other? I mean, is your heart all right? We'll go for a jog. We're going to take up jogging. I need that in a partner.
Talking about heart conditions and trusting your doctor, my late husband, I did not kill him. I loved him to bits. He died of natural causes. Okay.
That's
However,
what Shipman said.
However, before he wasn't very well, and he had a pacemaker, and he had to go for, oh God, I can't remember which scan it is. The ones where they put you in a tube and it's very noisy and it's magnetic and what have you.
Oh, that's gone out of my
Anyway,
head as well. And I do know what exactly, CAT scan, is it, or a MRI?
I think it's the MRI. That's right, magnetic resonant something or other imaging. Anyway, the doctor knew he had a pacemaker because, as I said, here in Spain, everything is on your medical records. And he sent Derek off for this MRI. And fortunately, I was filling in the form for him. And one of the questions was, do you have any medical implants? So I went up to the receptionist and said, well, actually, he's got a pacemaker. And they said, he can't have this.
Yeah.
He definitely cannot have this. Because apparently, look, I don't know, I might be exaggerating, but what she said was it could be pulled out because
it's a giant magnet, isn't it?
So exactly. So, the doctor there was very remiss because it could have killed him. Anyway, it didn't, unfortunately, and he didn't have it done. But it just goes to show how mistakes, genuine mistakes, can be made.
Yeah.
In your case with the penicillin, in his case with overlooking the fact that he had the pacemaker. But they're mistakes. It's not like going and killing 400 or 500 people or however many he actually killed, going back to Shipman.
Well, the NHS in the UK, I mean, they work really hard, bless them, and there's a lot that they've got to do with ever decreasing, budgets and things. But they do have a league table of their death rates, which is quite disturbing. Because then you look and you think, well, I'm going to a hospital that has a high death rate compared to the one in the next region.
Yes.
And in theory, they should all be working with the same equipment, with the same level of competency. So you just kind of have to wonder, is there another Shipman?
Yeah.
Well, it's possible. And again, as I said in the other episode, I wish I could remember that nurse's name. The nurse who...
Lucy Lepke,
that's the one. Well done.
Yeah.
She was killing babies for no reason. And when that was brought up, the person who brought it up was actually punished.
Yeah, I remember that. That was shocking, wasn't it? And because I think Lucy Letby is quite sort of, I'm going to say meek and mild again, but kind of went under the radar a little bit, was thought of maybe more likely that she'd be bullied than she would do anything like that. Yeah. And there was somebody who brought it up in Shipman's case, wasn't there? Was it the person who was signing all the death certificates, or was second signing?
Exactly. He was saying, no, there's something wrong here. There's too many people that there's got to be something wrong. And he was ignored.
Yes, it was, I think it was a she. Was it Linda Reynolds, Dr. Linda Reynolds? Yeah, so she reported the death certificates to the coroner. And then I think the coroner went and spoke to Shipman himself directly and then just shut it down. And then it was her and the taxi driver you mentioned, Lorraine, who then did eventually go to the police. So talking of accidents, something that I found, that a doctor might make a mistake. Something that I found in this report, and I listened to a lot of podcasts about Shipman over the past couple of weeks, and this I'd not heard come up anywhere. Okay, so when they're looking at the numbers, there's somebody that it says is still alive. And I was like, they're looking at the numbers of murders and deaths. I thought, there's a survivor. There's a survivor. Like, that's huge. What and how? And when I looked into it, or when I didn't look into it deeply, but I found it on the report. It was somebody who's now called Professor Oswald. And Shipman visited her at home in 1974 to take bloods and gave pethidine and gave an overdose of pethidine to her, which is the drug that Shipman was addicted to. So he had a drug addiction himself in his earlier career, and then tried to revive her. So it was not at all like his usual MO, where he would give the overdose and then he would leave them, I don't know, watch them or whatever awful things he did. But in this case, he gave it and then he started giving emergency first aid, and he revived her and she survived. And she wasn't a professor at the time, but she has since become one. So on that, actually Dame Janet Smith, who did the inquiry, led the inquiry. So she's just, as another little extra fact, she also did the Savile inquiry. Yeah. So if you ever want something inquired, I think Dame Janet Smith's your woman. I'm gonna write to her and ask her if she can find out why my children are so hard to get up and dressed and out the door in the morning. Like, why are my negotiation skills tested to their absolute limits before 8 a.m? But yeah, so actually he was, that in the end, obviously he wasn't actually convicted of it, but they said it was actual bodily harm and not attempted murder, because it wasn't within his MO, because he did try and, like, he did revive her, he did help her. So there's part of like, is that a genuine mistake? Was he experimenting?
Why did he
Was he
revive her?
experimenting with Pepperdine?
Well, that's yes, that's what I'm thinking. Was how early in his killing spree was that?
Yeah, 1974. So yeah. So 1971 is I think 1971 is the first death that was or was it 19? I can't remember the date of the first death that was attributed to him, which was
someone else there? Was that why he kind of then jumped into hero mode?
I don't know, because I think a majority of his murders happened in the victim's home, but also there's a whole section on care homes. He was doing it in care homes as well. He killed.
Oh, they loved him in the care homes. They thought he was absolutely wonderful. No, they did. Come on in. We love you.
Oh, he entered general practice in 1974. So that is really early on, isn't it? That might actually
very early.
Oh, yeah.
So in the care homes, he was kind of like that cat that settles on the bed of someone who's going to die. Something they'll talk about, yeah. Oh, Shipman's in there. Bye, Bob.
I also, part of me's wondering why that cat wasn't called Shipman.
Oh
no! Oh,
Dark. Sorry, it's got dark and dank down the rabbit hole.
It always does.
But now, with that woman, I'm wondering if that was him, as you said, experimenting. Let me see what happens if. Maybe he never intended to kill her. He was just using her as a guinea pig.
Maybe. I mean, if he was addicted to that drug, I'd think he wouldn't use that, because he'd be like keeping every drop for himself.
You'd think so.
Yeah, I don't know the dates of his addiction, but when he was addicted to Pepperdine for quite a long. Like, didn't they say he had a vein that was completely collapsed, that you would expect in somebody who had a really high level addiction to something. So the fact he was able to get another job and continue practicing is incredible, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Well, it is, and it also shows a high degree of, I suppose, manipulation. He must have known how flawed he was, because he knew he was addicted.
I think that's what he did in the interview when he went to the new surgery and he got employed, because I think it was on the TV documentary that I watched, but the doctor who employed him was there and said, we kind of thought we'd got lucky, really, because he was very open about it. He talked about it. And for his credentials of what we wanted him to do, we thought we were quite lucky to get him, really.
Yeah.
Felt like he'd and it actually, I think he had rehabilitated, obviously hard for me to say right now, because it doesn't look like he did it again. He obviously started to feel his compulsions in another way.
Well, you see, there you go. That could actually be how he was getting his high, how he was getting his hit. Instead of injecting himself, he was killing people and getting a buzz off of killing people. A different form of addiction.
Yeah, in terms of profile, the murders started quite late in his life, when his mum died, though, didn't they? Or am I wrong in that?
His mum died when he was 17. And I think then there was some talk that maybe that prompted him to become a doctor because he was really fascinated. She had breast cancer, I believe, long, painful battle with breast cancer. And at the end of her life, her doctor would come to the home and would administer diamorphine. I think it was diamorphine, but would administer something that would relieve her pain. And there is talk that Shipman was perhaps fascinated by that process.
So that's what got him on the tracks, kind of thing. Yeah, could be. He's so hard to profile because just I'm just thinking, was he a kind of psycho Norman Bates style that he lost his mum and therefore he started to lose his way, but then 17's quite early for that. That's more of a kind of more mature man thing. But then it's like, and then he's got an addiction to the drugs, which would maybe counter some of the things that he did wrong, like the obvious kind of stuff that he did wrong. But then, Lisa, you mentioned before about turning the
this was in the inquiry. So he used to, the fire would be on or the heat would be up when it probably the weather didn't really call for it. And in the report, they suspect that this was to help the morphine metabolize quicker. So that potentially it would break it down. So if there was any kind of autopsy or toxicology report, that it started to break it down a bit quicker. Or would it also kind of speed up the onset of rigor mortis? So might make it more likely that people would think, oh, let's go to cremation rather than burial, perhaps.
Because certainly a lot of them were cremated.
Yeah. Well, he wanted the evidence gone, didn't he? I mean, he didn't want it to stick around, which again is also kind of the foresight of some, like the planning stage of something. But it just sounds like, he did things wrong. So like he gave that patient 30 times the amount they needed, which is clearly going to show up.
It wasn't that. It was that he dispensed that much. So he somehow managed to get that much dispensed, which would have potentially killed 30 people. So why on earth would one patient need that much?
And that's that. My thought with that was he had to be using it on other people. Are they people that we don't know about?
Yeah.
That he used it on.
Yeah. And how, but that would have drawn attention. You know what I mean? Like it's such a kind of silly mistake to ask for that amount, because then that's drawing attention to yourself. And like you said at the end with the will, I didn't know whether it's like the equivalent of a serial killer's bad day. Oh, that'll do.
Maybe he just got careless. He clearly was an arrogant person. And maybe he just felt, this is it. I am above the law. I am my own judge and jury, and I decide who lives and who dies, and I'm not going to get caught.
Well, do you want to prove that point, Lorraine, and talk about how arrogant he was? So of the 215 killings, one took place in Todmorden. So these are the ones they've actually attributed to him. 71 during his time at Donnybrook practice, and the remaining 143 at Market Street. But so he killed one patient in 1992, 16 in 1993, 11 in 1994. In each of years 1995, 1996, he killed 30, increasing to 37 in 1997. And during the first 3 months of 1998, before he got caught, he'd done 15.
Yeah.
So he was going to top his numbers.
That does sound like an addict.
Like any addict, he needed more and more and more.
And his first was Mrs. Eva Lyons, and that was in March of 1975. So if he had made the mistake with the pethidine or whatever that was in 1974, I said that was, wasn't I? So yeah, he was experimenting.
Yeah, that was.
I think so.
Do you want to hear some other, I mean, I'm going to say fun facts, but I probably shouldn't, but just other things that I found out that interested me. One thing I found out that interested me was that he held an antenatal clinic at 12 p.m. every Tuesday at Donnybrook. No, doesn't that when that talk about profiling him, doesn't that just sit so bizarrely in there? And when he actually, and I did pop this in, but just before, but he did actually only put natural causes on 4 of the death certificates that he issued. So he usually said things like more technical names that I don't know for heart attacks and strokes and things like that. And that was one of the things the doctors looked at in the inquiry, because actually people wouldn't be sitting peacefully. Usually if people died of these things, they'd be trying maybe to get to the phone to call for help, or the door, or that there would have been a hand move for pain or things like that, whereas they always looked very peaceful. And there were even things where Shipman like put a book in their hand or the paper to make it look like they were just sitting reading. When he was asked, and this is how arrogant he was and an awful person he was. So they did ask him to contribute to the inquiry, but obviously he refused. Then the police attempted to interview him in his cell in April 2001. And when they went into his cell, he just turned around, faced the wall, and like ignored them, like blanked them, like a toddler going, I'm not going to talk to you right now. He literally turned and faced the wall. And wouldn't give, and that, I think that's I mean, there's lots of terrible things about him, but that's almost one of the worst, that he just couldn't give the families of these victims any, that he couldn't admit it, that he couldn't give them any closure, I suppose.
For me, this comes back to his arrogance. He didn't see why he should be held accountable.
Yeah, he felt he did the right thing, didn't he, I suppose.
Can I predict another fun fact about him?
Okay.
I'm not saying this is true, but Morris dancer.
What?
Does he not look? Don't you think so?
Looks like a Morris dancer.
I can just see with all these red flags, like dancing with all the red flags. Like, oh yeah, he's an addict. He's this. He's a controller. He's he's emotionally abusive, because being like ignoring people, that's emotional abuse.
Yes, absolutely.
So I just see him. I see him in my mind in a white Morris dancer, just jiggling around with red flags and bells.
Do you know that if there are any Morris dancers listening to this, they're going to be thinking, what? What is she on?
How dare you?
All I can say is be very careful the next time you're in a place where there are Morris dancers, because they have sticks. Yeah.
Yeah, the maypole fair. Yeah. I know. Yeah.
I would.
They're going to run over and start throwing penicillin at you.
Yeah.
Ah! He was. You say Morris dancing, but he was sporty, wasn't he? I think there was like a thing that. There's part of him, there were some really hidden things about him that were revealed. So in school, apparently, though he was very quiet, he didn't have many friends, he was a bit of an oddball at school, he was great at rugby, and he was a very aggressive rugby player. So there's like this sort of hidden aggression that he's perhaps subduing in his normal day-to-day life. And then when they looked in the home, it was like a horse home, I think. It was like full of, I think it was really like, he was very meticulous and kind of neat in his office, but his home was full of all sorts of, there was lots of paperwork and files, but there was just lots of stuff there. So I don't know what that maybe says about Primrose, or we're kind of, there's no evidence ever been said that he was abusive or controlling in the home, but I kind of can't see him any other way.
So before we let Lorraine go out, we let her escape the rabbit hole.
Oh, I want to keep. Please let me go. Let me go.
I'm going to go and find more fun facts about more serial killers for you.
Down here, I'm scared.
Lorraine, don't worry. It's just a reprieve, because we want you back down.
Enough to come back.
You mentioned another book and another case. You mentioned your book, is it Bye Bye Baby? And that's that's inspired by the Madeline McCann case. And that is a rabbit hole we need to dive down deep. So you are coming back, whether you like it or not.
I really want to put the little running sound effect in there. Can we put, that, and it's me running off to go down the rabbit hole for that one.
But before we let Lorraine go briefly, let her go, you have a new book coming out called The Family Home. Can you tell us about that?
I'd love to. It actually came out last month, so it's nice and new. Can I just give you a tiny little bit of background? When I lived in South Africa, I counselled at a refuge for battered women and abused children. And some of the stories, well, not actually the stories, the lives that these women were living was pretty horrific. And sadly, in all too many cases, they went back to their abusive partners because they had nowhere else to go. They had no escape. Some of them went back to their family homes, their parents, but also in cases there, the parents felt that these women had let them down or shamed them in some way and forced them back into the abusive marriage. So that was sort of like it's been on my mind for a hell of a long time. And it was what would happen or what could happen to a woman who escapes from a 20-year abusive marriage. The only place that she can go to, because he has controlled her to such an extent, she has no money, she has no friends because he's isolated her. She has not been allowed to drive. I mean, this is a woman who really is pretty helpless because she has been made so. And she returns to her family home where she has been told not to come back by her father, but that she has nowhere to go. And her half-sister takes her in. And the book is actually the story of the secrets within that family that come back to threaten her in the present, her husband who refuses to let her go and so tracks her down, and how she manages to find a way out of it. And it's called The Family Home.
Is it set in South Africa, Lorraine, or is it set in the UK?
No, it's set in the UK. It's actually set in Rutland.
Oh, that's just down the road.
Ooh. Yes, it's set in Rutland. It's a big house near Rutland Water. I used a bit of poetic license with citing the house, but yeah, it's a psychological thriller, and I'm pleased to say it's getting very good reviews.
Yay!
Fab. Oh, well, again, can I have the sign of me running off to go and get it? Where can I read it?
Well, it's available at Waterstones, obviously Amazon. If you're a library user, it's in the library. Sort of anywhere really where you can buy a book.
Excellent.
Fab.
You're off. All right.
I'm off.
As is probably all the listeners now ready to go and grab that book. Well, needless to say, thank you, Lorraine. Thank you so much for coming on. And
yes, thanks.
We've overrun again, which we normally do when we're deep down a rabbit hole and really interested. And I think we literally scratched the surface of Harold Shipman. We didn't really, there's so much more.
But unfortunately, there's so much we're never going to know.
True.
Because he's dead.
True. Because he's dead. And that was the ultimate kind of control, wasn't it?
Yes, I will die when I choose.
Yeah.
But thank you very much for having me. I've absolutely loved being here, and I'm looking forward to coming back again.
Oh, fantastic. Yay. We can't wait.
Yay. We will arrange that. So listeners, just a quick mention that we are everywhere you want us to be on social media, and we are the Red Rabbit Hole podcast on most of them. I'm assuming, Lisa.
We're around every corner, just waiting for you.
We're around every corner, everywhere you want to be. There we are. And don't forget to subscribe on Patreon to get early access to some of the interviews that we do and the episodes, and the Weird Warrens. Don't forget them, because they don't forget you. And just a quick thank you to all you guys for listening too. We really appreciate you, don't we, Lise?
Yes, we do, very much so. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you guys. So thanks for listening. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
See you later, guys.
Bye.
See you later. Bye.